So once again, welcome back to yet another class of geography. Today I'll be taking the class for 7, all the sections, and I do hope that you are revising your lessons that had been taught in the previous classes. Please make sure that you do your question answers. Please go through the lesson. It's very important. You have to read the lesson in order to solve the different questions that are there at the back, and the more you study, the better. I'd also like to request you all to please be constructive at home, read some good books, spend your time fruitfully. When you are not studying, please make sure that you help at home, do the household chores, read some good books, study regularly morning and evening, keep a timetable, which is very important. So dear students, today we start a new chapter, and that is chapter number 4, and the topic we're doing is weather and climate. So, when we talk about weather, what are we talking about? Weather basically means the condition of the atmosphere at a particular place and at a particular time. For instance, right now, it may be raining. So when someone calls me and asks me, what is the weather condition? How is the weather in Pakyong? We'll say, oh, the weather in Pakyong is very cold. It's raining, we'll say. Or suppose it is very sunny. And if my friend calls me from Delhi and asks me, oh, how is the weather in Pakyong? I would tell him, oh, the weather in Pakyong is very fine. It's very sunny. So, weather is basically the condition of the atmosphere in a particular place for a particular time. Now, in Pakyong it may be sunny, but it may not be the same in Mangan. In Mangan it may be cloudy, very cold. If you go to suppose Rabunda, there it may be raining. See? That means the weather is not the same in all the places. It goes on changing from place to place. So weather is basically the condition of the atmosphere at a particular place and at a particular time. But whereas if you see climate, climate is something which is seen in a broader aspect. It is the condition of the atmosphere for a long duration of time. See, we can't come to a conclusion of a climate of a particular region in 1 day, 2 days, no. It takes almost 30 to 35 years to find or to study the climatic conditions of a place. So weather is the state of atmosphere for a short period of time. See, climate is the condition of the atmosphere for a longer period of time. You can just see here. See, difference between weather and climate. Weather is the state of atmosphere for a short period of time. See, weather goes on changing. Morning it may be sunny, afternoon it may be cold or raining, evening again it may be cloudy. So it goes on changing. Weather is a state of atmosphere for a short period of time. Weather takes place in a small area. That means the weather in Pakyong will be different compared to the weather in Rabunda. The weather in Rabunda will be different compared to the weather in Mangan. The weather in Mangan will be different compared to the weather of Kalimpong or Siliguri or whatever it is. So the weather takes place in a small area. When weather goes on changing, it goes on changing. See, it doesn't remain the same. As I told you, morning it may be sunny, afternoon it may be cloudy, evening it may be very, very cold. So weather goes on changing. Now if you see, what is climate? Climate is the state of atmosphere for a long period of time. See, climate is the state of atmosphere for a long period of time. It doesn't change every day. I've told you, the climate of a place is found by studying the weather conditions for almost 30 to 35 years. Then only we know the climate of a place. And more importantly, climate takes place in a large area. For instance, India is a large area. So we say the climate of India is tropical monsoon type of climate. See? We will not say the weather of India. Because I told you, weather is a state of atmosphere for a short period of time, but it takes place in a small area. It goes on changing. Climate is a state of atmosphere for a long period of time. It takes place in a large area and it remains the same. It doesn't change. It remains the same. So this is the difference between weather and climate. Now let's go a little further and see. Now, what is recording daily weather, or what do we mean by recording daily weather, or what do we mean by weather forecast, or how is the weather useful to us? See, why is recording weather very important for us? See, whenever we take the readings of the temperature, whenever we take the readings of the rainfall, whenever we take the reading of the pressure, or whether it's the humidity, we have to keep in mind it's taken over a period of 24 hours. Today morning, if I go exactly at 7 a.m. and take the reading of the temperature, or rainfall, or humidity, or pressure, whatever it is, today morning if I go at 7 a.m. in the morning and take the readings of the different elements of weather and climate, which are temperature, rainfall, humidity, wind direction, wind speed, all these things. If I go in the morning and take the reading at 7 a.m., exactly tomorrow morning I will have to go again at 7 a.m. to take the next reading, which is a span of 24 hours. So whenever we take the reading of the elements of weather, we have to always do it in a span of 24 hours. Now, why is weather reading very important? Why is recording daily weather very important? It's very important because of so many aspects. See, we do the recording of the weather mainly, because it informs us, it gives us an idea of what a particular place will have, a particular, or what type of climate a particular place will experience, or what type of weather conditions a particular place experiences. That is why we do the readings. See, every state has a meteorological department, meteorological station. See, a weather station. Sikkim also has a weather station where we have different instruments to measure temperature, rainfall, humidity, pressure, wind direction, wind speed. All these instruments are kept in the weather station in Gangtok. That is the meteorological station, weather station. From these weather stations, they study the weather conditions for 24 hours and they send the report to Pune, where we have the headquarters for the meteorological department. From there, they take the statistics of the different states and then they flash it out in the newspaper, they give it to the different television channels, the FM channels and so on. Whosoever requires it, they give this information. And more importantly, it's given to the different important sectors which are very much dependent on the weather conditions. Like for instance, if you see the aviation sector, the aeroplane also when the aeroplane takes off, they have to have a very, very clear idea of the weather condition that is prevailing in the place where they are landing. See, they just can't take off and land without any information. They need to know what type of weather condition is being experienced in the place where they are landing. Suppose the aeroplane takes off from Calcutta and is going to Delhi. So the pilot will constantly be given feedbacks of the weather conditions, the altitude and so on as he moves towards Delhi. This is to avoid any difficulties in landing of the plane. That is why weather recordings are very important, because it gives us an idea of what type of weather is being experienced in a particular place. And according to we program a schedule. In a very small example, like you see in the school, which school also has a calendar, and the calendar of the school is also adjusted, is made looking into the aspects of the weather condition as well. When we organize the sports day, when a school organizes the sports day, we don't organize the sports day in the month of June and July, because this is a time when we have having a lot of rainfall, plenty of rainfall. So we normally organize the sports day of our school in the month of October, because at that time it's very sunny. So these things we come to know. That is why weather recording is so very important, because it gives us an idea of what a particular place will experience, what type of weather a particular place experiences will be having an idea. See, weather forecast is also very important. See, the meteorologist forecast this weather. They are the scientists who are there in the weather station who take the readings and then forecast the weather. It's mainly useful for the aviation, the aeroplanes, the ships while going to the sea. See, they may not know what lies ahead in the sea. So according to the weather forecast, they will be able to know, or they will be able to take the precautions accordingly so that they may not land into any danger. See, the ship may not get wrecked or destroyed. See, so that it gives us an information to the people prior to its occurrence. See, when we say the rainfall, when we say the humidity is 90%, that means we have an idea that now it's about to rain. See, so this gives us an idea of whether we'll be having rainfall or not, whether the sky will be clear or not tomorrow, whether it will be cloudy or not tomorrow. See, they give it every day in the televisions. Every time it's given in the newspapers, the weather forecast, so that we will have an idea of the weather condition of a particular place. That is why recording weather is so very important. Now let's see the first one. The first element of weather climate, temperature. What is temperature? Temperature is basically the degree of hotness or coldness of the air. Once again, I would like to repeat. Temperature is the degree of hotness or coldness of the air. It is measured by an instrument called the thermometer, or the 6's maximum and minimum thermometer. Temperature is measured by an instrument called the thermometer, and also the 6's maximum and minimum thermometer. We have two scales that are used in the thermometer. Two scales are there. One is the Celsius scale and the other one is the Fahrenheit scale. In the Celsius scale, you can see here. In the Celsius scale, the boiling point is 100 degrees centigrade and the freezing point is 0 degrees centigrade in the Celsius scale. Whereas in the Fahrenheit scale, the boiling point is 212 degrees Fahrenheit. 212 degrees Fahrenheit and the freezing point is 32 degrees Fahrenheit. That is in the case of Fahrenheit scale. See? So we have two scales, the Celsius and the Fahrenheit. In India we use the Celsius scale. Now, different places have different temperatures. But there are again some places which experience the same temperature in our country. They experience the same temperature. So what we have is, we have an imaginary line. We have an imaginary line which joins these spaces, which is called as an isotherm. It's an isotherm. There's a small correction earlier. It's an isotherm. So what is an isotherm? Isotherms are imaginary lines which joins places having the same temperature. Isotherms are imaginary lines joining places having the same temperature. That is the isotherm. Now you can look at the instrument here. See, this is the thermometer and this is the 6's maximum and minimum thermometers. It records the temperature of the day. See, we have the centigrade as well as the Fahrenheit scale. This is the mercury. Here also you can see, we have the 6's maximum thermometer. It's a U-tube. Now this instrument shows the maximum and the minimum temperature of a place for a duration of 24 hours. So this side shows the minimum temperature, this place shows the maximum temperature. Now at the bottom we have mercury, and then on top we have alcohol. See, on top of this side there's a vacuum for the alcohol to expand and contract. So during daytime, when the temperature increases, the alcohol expands, it pushes the mercury this side, and because there's a space here, there's some empty space here, so it goes higher and higher, And then this metal indicator is here, which moves higher and higher up as the temperature increases, and it will stay in the place where it is the hottest. Similarly, when evening comes and night comes, it starts to get colder and colder, and this mercury again starts to contract. As the mercury contracts, what happens? It moves up, it moves back, and therefore the more it contracts, the more this metal index is pulled up. And it goes and stays in a place where it is the coldest, which will show the minimum temperature. So this is our general idea of how the 6's maximum and minimum thermometer works. This shows the minimum temperature, this shows the maximum temperature. But we have to keep in mind, on top of this bulb here, in the maximum side, there's a vacuum for the alcohol to expand and contract, because of which we get the readings of the maximum temperature and the reading of the minimum temperature. In between this alcohol and the mercury, we have an ion index, which is attached to a spring to the sides, and accordingly it rises up or comes down because of the change in the temperature. Now let's go to the next one. What is the diurnal range of temperature? When we want to find the temperature for 24 hours, we say the diurnal range of temperature. That means the diurnal range of temperature is found by taking the maximum temperature of the day and subtracting it with the minimum temperature of the day. That means maximum temperature minus minimum temperature for 24 hours will give you the diurnal range of temperature. If today the hottest is 30 degrees centigrade and the coldest at night is say 10 degrees centigrade, so what is the difference? 20 degrees centigrade. That 20 degrees centigrade is the diurnal range of temperature. Difference between the maximum and the minimum temperature of a day gives us the diurnal range of temperature. Next one. What is mean daily temperature? Now, mean daily temperature is found by adding the maximum with the minimum. You add the highest temperature with the lowest temperature and you divide it by 2. See, maximum plus minimum divided by 2. If the maximum temperature today is 30 degrees centigrade and the minimum is 10 degrees centigrade, so 30 plus 10 is how much? 40 degrees centigrade. This 40 degrees centigrade is divided by how much? 2, which will give us how much? 20 degrees centigrade. So that 20 degrees centigrade is the mean daily temperature for a particular day. Now, what is mean monthly temperature? How do we calculate the mean monthly temperature? Mean monthly temperature is calculated by adding the mean daily temperature. You have to add the mean daily temperature for all the days of the month. Suppose in a month there are 30 days. So for 30 days, we have to add the mean daily temperature. And after you have added the mean daily temperatures for 30 days, we will divide it by the number of days of the month. And how much is it? 30. Whereby we'll get the answer. So mean monthly temperature is calculated by adding the mean daily temperature for all the days of the month and dividing it with the number of days in that month. Whereby we will get mean monthly temperature. Now, what is annual range of temperature? Annual range of temperature is basically found by taking the highest temperature and the lowest temperature. That means the difference between the highest and the lowest temperature, mean monthly temperature. The difference between the highest and the lowest mean monthly temperature will give you the annual range of temperature. The highest mean monthly temperature you take and the lowest mean monthly temperature you take, and that difference will give you the annual range of temperature. Now let's see the next one, rainfall. What is rainfall? See, it's a form of precipitation. Rainfall is a form of precipitation. When the sun shines, the water evaporates. As the water evaporates and goes in the sky, condensation takes place. Because of the cold temperature, condensation takes place. And when condensation takes place, that gas, the water vapor, is turned into liquid, that is, droplets of water. These droplets of water will float in the air dust particles. So these dust particles and gas particles are there in the air. This water droplet will cling onto that dust particles, whereby they form into clouds. See, more the water, more the dust, and therefore the clouds look darker in color, blacker in color. Lesser the water, lesser the dust, and therefore the cloud looks whiter in color. So we can judge whether the cloud has plenty of rainfall or not, even by looking at the cloud. If there's plenty of dust in the cloud looks black in color. That means, we have plenty of water there in the cloud, whereby any time we'll be having rainfall. But if there's very less clouds, and the clouds are very white in color, means there's less amount of water in the cloud as well. So, the next one as I was just talking is rainfall. So, rainfall is an example of precipitation. Then from the clouds, the water is released in the form of rainfall, either in the form of snowfall, depending on the temperature, or either in the form of hailstones, or also either in the form of sleet. Sleet means when water and ice is mixed together, it is called sleet. When water and ice mixes together, it is called as sleet. So, rainfall is one of the examples of precipitation. Now, it is measured by an instrument called the rain gauge. The rainfall is measured by an instrument called the rain gauge. This water is collected in a jar, is measured in the measuring cylinder. That means after we have collected the water, this also is for 24 hours. Today morning I measure the rainfall, tomorrow exactly at 7 a.m. I have to go and measure the rainfall as well. Whatever water is collected in the rain gauge, I will have to take the water and pour it into the measuring cylinder. And then we will measure and see how much rainfall has occurred in that 24 hours. It's called as a measuring cylinder. Okay, now when we install a rain gauge, we have to keep in mind the rain gauge cannot be kept anywhere as you feel. You cannot take a rain gauge and say, I want to measure the rainfall and keep it under a tree. You will get very less rainfall, you will not get the accurate reading. You cannot take a rain gauge and keep it under a roof. You have to keep a rain gauge away from the building and trees to get an accurate reading of the rainfall. A rain gauge should be installed away from building and trees. See, one. Number two, it should be placed in the ground with 30 centimeters of it above the ground to avoid splashing of water. That means some portion of the rain gauge can be kept under the ground if there is no stand, so that it doesn't fall off. And then majority of the rain gauge should be above the ground, so that the water does not splash from the ground into the rain gauge, whereby we get a wrong reading. Normally we have a stand. In our school we have a stand, or in different schools they have a stand, and on that stand we keep the rain gauge, which is away from the building and trees, so that we get an accurate reading, so that there is no roof over the rain gauge. Okay, so as I was saying, see, when we take the precautions, we have to keep in mind the rain gauge is not installed near a building or under a tree. It should be kept away from building and trees. Number two, as I just said, see, it should be placed almost 30 centimeters above the ground, so that the groundwater does not splash into it. But these days we have stands where, raised above the ground, so there's no question of water splashing into it. Much more better and safer as well. And these are kept away from building and trees, so that we get an exact reading of the rainfall. Now let's see the instruments here. See, we can see this is the rain gauge, these two are rain gauge. Measuring cylinder, the water goes into this funnel and collects in the jar here. Here we don't have a jar, but it collects in this container. Here we have this one is the measuring cylinder itself. So normally when the water enters through the funnel, it collects in a jar inside the rain gauge. And whatever water is collected in the jar in the rain gauge is taken and poured in the measuring cylinder. And accordingly we know how much water is collected in that 24 hours span of time. It's measured in millimeters. So that's how we measure the rainfall. If today we go at exactly at 7 a.m. in the morning, tomorrow exactly 7 a.m. we have to go to take the reading of the rainfall. Now let's see the wind direction and speed. What is wind? Wind is the horizontal movement of air, straight. Horizontal movement of air is called as wind. Wind always blows from a high pressure area to a low pressure area. That means wind blows from a hot place to a cold place. Cold place to a hot place. The cold place experiences a high pressure. Warm place experiences a low pressure. So wind is a horizontal movement of air from a high pressure area to a low pressure area. When the warm air rises up and when the cold air sinks, it is called as air current. So along with this air current and wind, we have the circulation of water, air taking place in the atmosphere, whereby we have the water cycle. So, wind is basically the horizontal movement of air from a high pressure area to a low pressure area. It is measured by an instrument called the wind vane, weathercock or windsock. You can see here. Wind direction is measured by an instrument called the wind vane, weathercock or windsock. We also have an instrument which measures the direction speed of the wind. The speed of the wind is measured by an instrument called the anemometer. Anemometer, which records the speed of the wind. And we also have an instrument which records the speed of the wind by itself automatically in a meteorological station, which is called as the anemograph. Anemograph is an instrument which measures the speed of the wind by itself in a meteorological station. And then the speed of the wind is measured by the Beaufort scale. The scale that is used to measure the speed of the wind is the Beaufort scale. We can just see the instrument here. See, this is the wind vane. Arrow is the wind vane. This is the weathercock. Now the arrow is always smaller than the tail. The reason why is because when the wind blows, more pressure is applied to the tail, whereby the arrow turns this side towards me, which indicates that the wind is blowing this way. Similarly with the weathercock as well. See, the head is smaller compared to the tail. When the wind blows, more pressure is applied to the tail, the back side, whereby that is pushed this side and the head turns towards me, which indicates that the wind is again blowing from this side. The directions are shown here: north, south, east and west. This is a wind vane and this is a weathercock. Both these instruments measure the direction of the wind. They show the direction of the wind. And this is a windsock. This is mostly kept in the aerodromes and helipads, where they show the direction of the wind as the aeroplanes and helicopters land. They can take the precautions accordingly looking at this. So this indicates the direction of the wind in the aerodromes and helipads. Okay, let's go now next one, weather map. What is a weather map, or why is weather map very important? Weather maps are very important because it gives us an idea of the weather conditions of a particular place. They tell us the temperature, they tell us the rainfall, they tell us the cloud cover, they tell us the sunshine that will be taking place in that particular area. That is why weather forecasting is so very important, and accordingly we plan our programs. See, looking at the newspaper, we see the weather forecast, which is given by the meteorologist by studying the different instruments that are kept in the weather station or meteorological station. And when they study these inputs, see, they give it in the newspaper, they flash in the newspaper. And by looking at these, we can plan our schedules. See? So a weather map is basically a map which represents the different weather aspects that will be taking place in a particular area. That's why it's so very important to study the weather maps. Now, see, if you see, there are different places which have the same temperature, there are different places which have the same amount of rainfall, there are different places which have the same amount of pressure. Now, if there are places which have the same amount of temperature in an area, they are shown by a line called as the isotherms. Isotherms are imaginary lines joining places having the same amount of temperature. Isoheids are imaginary lines which joins places in the country which have the same amount of rainfall. These are all imaginary lines, but on the map they show a line to give us an idea that which all places have the same amount of temperature, which states have the same amount of pressure. And isobars again are imaginary lines which joins places having the same amount of pressure. This is also shown on a map by an imaginary, by a line, which is actually an imaginary line. Now let's see what is humidity. What is humidity? Humidity is the amount of water vapor present in the air. How much water is there in the air is termed as humidity. The humidity can be high. If the humidity is very high, that means we will be having rainfall very soon. If the humidity is very less, there's a very less chance of having rainfall. This humidity is measured by an instrument called the hygrometer, or it's also measured by an instrument called the wet and dry bulb thermometer. So humidity is measured by a hygrometer and a wet and dry bulb thermometer. Okay, now the scales, what are the scales that are used to measure humidity? Humidity is measured by two scales. In the case of absolute humidity, is measured in grams per cubic meter, and in case of relative humidity, it is measured in percentage. That means, in the case of absolute humidity, it is shown with the scale, grams per cubic meters. And in the case of relative humidity, it is shown by percentage. Now, what is absolute humidity? Absolute humidity is the amount of water vapor present in the air at a given time and at a given place. Once again I am saying, absolute humidity is the amount of water vapor present in the air at a given time and given place. Whereas the relative humidity is the difference between the amount of water vapor present in the air and the actual amount of water vapor the air can hold at that temperature, at that particular moment. Once again I am saying, relative humidity is the difference between the amount of water vapor present in the air and the actual amount of water vapor the air can hold at that temperature. Suppose if the water vapor right now, humidity is 50%, but the air has the capacity to hold 100%. So this difference of 50 and 100 is called as relative humidity, which is shown with the scale called as the percentage. Now, as I was saying, saturated air, what does saturated air means? Saturated air means when the humidity is 100% and any moment we'll have rainfall. So this is the instrument, a hygrometer, showing the humidity, see? And this is the wet and dry bulb thermometer. So you can see here. See what is dry and what is wet. This bulb here, this thermometer here, at the end of this thermometer we have a bulb. That bulb is wrapped with a small muslin, a cloth. And that cloth dips into a small container of water, which will indicate the wet thermometer, which will indicate the difference of humidity. See? So if the difference between these two readings are same, it means that there's very high humidity. But if the difference between these two readings are big difference, that means the humidity is very, very less. So this is how we have the humidity, which is measured by a hygrometer, and also we have a humidity which shows the wet and dry bulb thermometer, which indicates the humidity of a place. Now let's see the atmospheric pressure. What is atmospheric pressure? Atmospheric pressure is basically the force exerted by the air on the Earth's surface. Atmospheric pressure is the force exerted by the column of the air on the Earth's surface. Atmospheric pressure, pressure of the air, the force of the air, that is called as atmospheric pressure. Now it's measured by an instrument called the barometer. Atmospheric pressure is measured by an instrument called the barometer. We have two types of barometer. One is the aneroid barometer and the other one is the mercury barometer. Now, this aneroid barometer is used more often because it's very portable, it's very small, it's very convenient to carry because there's no liquid inside. It's vacuum, so you can take it anywhere you go. That is why the aneroid barometer is used more than the mercury barometer. But the mercury barometer is more accurate. It has to be kept in a fixed place, and if it's kept in a fixed place, it will show an accurate reading of the atmospheric pressure. The scale that I use to measure atmospheric pressure is called as millibars or MB. Millibars or MB. And on the map, the imaginary lines which join places having the same amount of atmospheric pressure is called the isobars. I just told you. Isobars are imaginary lines which join places having the same amount of atmospheric pressure. See, aneroid barometer you can see here. It's very small, handy, can take it anywhere, convenient. But if you see, the mercury barometer is here. See, there's liquid here. See, liquid, mercury is here. So it's very difficult to take it from one place to another because the mercury will spill off. The glass tube will fall down. But if you keep it in a fixed place, this shows the accurate reading, exact reading. But we use more of the aneroid barometer because you can take it anywhere. So these are the instruments used to measure the atmospheric pressure. The aneroid barometer and the mercury barometer. So I guess this is the end of the class, dear students. I hope I did help you with some important points of this chapter so that you could understand whatever is there in the chapter. Please go through the lesson. Very important for you to go through the lesson in order to solve the assignments that are there at the back. So you could do the assignments from page number 47, exercise number A, B, C, D and E. Please do these exercises A, B, C, D and E. Please do it well. Make sure you do it properly. Don't neglect your home assignments. Very important. And in case there are some difficulties, you could leave it, and then when we come back, we could solve it in the class. Okay? But as far as possible, please make sure you do it. So till then, take care, dear students. Study well, enjoy yourself, and be good and study regularly. Thank you so much.